Hi, everyone. My name is Samuel Chong. I'm a resident of Los Angeles and a certified court interpreter and a Chinese translator. And when I was young, I was always fascinated by the unknown, the paranormal. I wanted to find out the reasons behind, like so many people disappearance in the Bermuda Triangle and who built the Great Pyramid. And I was always thinking that we were progressing not fast enough. What if we just learn from the ETs that have a advanced civilization? What if we just learn from them the knowledge, the technologies, and we can just take the shortcut and progress at a much faster pace? So I was always in my subconscious mind looking for information on ET contactees. So back in 2014, I was searching on Amazon for books like that, and I found this book. At that time, it was called Abduction to the Ninth Planet. So at that time, I was thinking it's just another book. By that time, I was reading so many books on the UFOs and ETs, and and I borrowed the book from the library because it was selling very expensively on Amazon. And I checked it out, and I couldn't put the book down because it answers all my questions about the Bible and also the unknown, the paranormal. So I'm going to share some of the stories, how I tracked down the author. The reason for me doing that is that the book, to me, contains so much incredible information already, but in the postscript, Michel Desmarquet, the author, says there are more incredible things that he was not allowed to write in the book because we were far from understanding them. I was thinking, other people wouldn't be able to understand that's reasonable. What about me? You know, I guess I'm smart enough to understand it. So I really wanted to find out what he didn't write in the book, and he wasn't allowed to write in the book. So I searched on the internet, and I found that several tourists took photos of him, and he was residing on a southern island in Vietnam, but they didn't want to disclose his exact address because he didn't allow them to do so. And then, so I found a website that posted this photo where his bungalow was. So this is a picture of his bungalow. I printed that photo out and showed it to the taxi driver when I landed on Foucault Island and asked him to take me there. And on the second try, he took me there. So that's how I met him. He was really annoyed at my visit in the first place because he was kind of wanted to have a quiet life, and he didn't want people to seek out for him for the book. I tried to ask him a lot of questions about what he didn't write in the book. He didn't really say anything to me. Even when we played chess together, he didn't get distracted. But on the third day, he showed me a contract saying that he wanted me to follow up with a Chinese publisher who paid him $2,000. And so I gladly took on the job because I thought if I did him a favor, he probably would do the same thing to me by telling me what he knew about didn't write in the book. So I followed up with the publisher, and they decided not to publish the book because of Chinese censorship. They were hoping that the government would loosen up their control on the media, but instead they tightened it up. So they gave up the idea of having the book published. So I had to find a different publisher, and after a few tries, I got a book published in China and Taiwan, and it became a bestseller in both countries. Before that happened, he asked me to visit him the second time, which I did. So that the photo on the left was when he was when I visited him the second time back in 2018, just 4 months before he passed away. He said he was going to live a long life for saying like 105 years old or so, but he died 4 months later. But fortunately, he told me what he didn't write in the book, and I'll be giving you some clues about it afterwards. Michel Desmarquet is a Frenchman. He was born in Normandy. He later moved to Australia in Keynes. I visited where he lived like just a few weeks ago and saw his old house, and he didn't have any neighbors. So it's a very secluded area. In the backyard, it's just a national forest, and I guess it's coincidental that I was able to get in touch with the translator who translated his book from French into English. Her name is Kay Smith. So I'll be talking to her in the next few days or so. She is traveling right now. Something about me is that I work with a lot of lawyers and doctors as a certified court interpreter. So it's pretty hard for me to believe just anything that people say. I need proof, I need evidence, and the facts need to resonate to me. So, but this book is so different, is that it seems to be like the book, the most important book that I ever read in my life. And also reading the book so far has been the best investment that I've ever made in my entire life. Remember, I also have a financial background. I studied economics and I studied financial analysis. So I read all the books by Warren Buffett and Jim Rogers, George Soros, and all those investment gurus. But nothing is compared to this book because it's so significant. It talks about the meaning of life and far more important than the material life that we all live in. Michel Desmarquet is a farmer. He didn't have a lot of education, and he didn't know how to type. Just imagine some like a landscaper in a remote village, remote city in Australia that just lived a very normal life, raising cattle and plant and taking care of his plants. He didn't read a lot of books on the esoteric subject. So I don't think he would have known so much information that he wrote about in this book. This is the photo that I took back in March 2016 when I first met him. I don't know if it's a coincidence. See my shirt, it has a bat. And so it came from, I don't know if it has anything to do with what the Chinese government claims that the coronavirus came from a bat. That's not true. It didn't come from a bat. I know that because I translated some of the works by some of the Chinese whistleblowers, which I'll be talking about later. So this is the golden planet, Thiaoouba, and its people. And the photo that I show here is the picture that Michel Desmarquet asked someone to draw, the picture of Tao, the main character in his book. Tao comes from Thiaoouba, category 9 planet, the highest category in the universe. So according to Michel Desmarquet and the Thiaoubans, there are a total of 9 different levels or categories of planet. And Earth is a category 1 planet. So we are living on the lowest category of planets in our galaxy or the universe. But nothing is to be ashamed of ourselves. We are just like elementary school students learning the basics, and they are just like professors guiding us and mentoring us. And they have all the abilities to do miraculous things, like Jesus did in the Bible, like in the past, as described in the Bible. So they are able to levitate. They're able to materialize objects, and they look forever young. They live forever. They can regenerate their body tissues and organs. They are always happy and highly spiritual. And when Michel Desmarquet was with them, he felt great compassion and love with this group of people. The Golden Planet is the name comes from Michel's impression when he was on their spacecraft, approaching the planet, where he saw a golden mist surrounding the planet. Everything seemed to be so beautiful and so perfect, just like a paradise. So it's a perfect planet and perfect world to live in. And Michel Desmarquet, after he came back, he didn't really want to remain on Earth. He was always hoping to go back to the planet, hoping Tao and her people to take him away. That's his hope. And I think he fulfilled his wish by by dying and moving on to the next ladder. So the book talks about the purpose of life. So, when I was young, I was always looking to earn money, to gain a lot of material uh, material material objects like books and gold and silver and things like that. I wanted to become a doctor because back 20 years ago, medical doctors earned a lot of money in the US. I wanted to become a fund manager because that way I can play the stock market and to earn money the easy way. But then I realized now that the Federal Reserve System is not what people normally think about. It's actually a private organization. They have private shareholders. So no matter how much you can earn from the financial markets, they can always print more money. So I gave that plan up. So I began to do something more significant, more meaningful. So the purpose of life is to use our free will to develop our spirituality. So we exist physically for the sole purpose of developing spiritually. And this theme is not new to a lot of you here because you have been enlightened, but not to the people that I encounter in my professional life. The lawyers and the doctors, they have different goals and purposes in their life. So I'm trying to find ways to make them understand that the purpose of life is to use it as a way to learn different lessons, spiritual lessons, and to respond to the challenges so that you can really take away what you have learned so far to your astral body and to your next life when you reincarnate. Talking about reincarnation, so I guess I don't need to talk a lot about the evidence to you guys here because you know about this, but to a lot of the unenlightened people, I have to mention about the works of Dr. Michael Newton and Brian Weiss. Their works, research is done on past life regression and also hypnosis. And also, for those of you who want to convey the messages to the non-believers, you can also mention the works by medical doctors of Dr. Ian Stevenson, and also stories of the families of the 9/11 terrorist attack victims, because some of the children remember what happened on 9/11, what happened when they were firefighters. So a lot of people ask me if they can go to Thiaoouba, a planet that seems to them as a paradise. I say to them that you have to elevate your mind, you have to elevate yourself spiritually, so that when you reincarnate, you can move on to a higher category of planet. So we don't necessarily have to be stuck here on Earth. We learn our lessons here and we move on. So it really depends on how you live this lifetime and how much lessons you accumulate in this lifetime. The book also talks about a lot of the existing archaeological sites, such as the Great Pyramid of Egypt. To me, the answers of the channeled answers, or some of the answers, have to be reasonable and resonating to my heart. And this book talks that the Great Pyramid of Egypt was built by Thoth about 17,000 years ago, using anti-gravitational technologies and ultrasonic vibratory systems. And I guess you have heard of stories about Tibetan monks using a musical instrument, making sounds to make huge stones to elevate, to levitate. They use a similar anti-gravitational technologies in the sense that using a vibrational frequency to cancel out or neutralize gravity. So they're able to make the huge stones aligned in a certain way to build a Great Pyramid of Egypt. They also use the ultrasonic vibratory systems to cut the huge stones in a very precise manner. And Thoth was a man from Atlantis, and he built the Great Pyramid in 9 years. I know some of you know Billy Meyer, and he received some information that the Great Pyramid was built using 200,000 slaves used in a 40-year period. To me, Thiaoouba prophecy is more reasonable and more resonating to my mind. And the Great Pyramid captures cosmic rays, forces, and energies, and as well as terrestrial energies. There are a lot of modern scientific studies on the pyramid structure, showing that it does have this kind of function and utilization of doing so. But it's also a communication center that enabled telepathic communication with other planets and other worlds in the universe. So it's more like this drawing shows that the energy is projected from the top of the pyramid to the sky, so that it's like a signal or reception amplifier, so that the user of the Great Pyramid can communicate with ETs on other planets. And they also used the pyramid to make rain, and by putting like a plate made of a silver alloy. And studies done by University of Reading in the UK show that they can actually project what they call the orgone energy to make rain by ionizing the sky, the clouds. And I think it's pretty beneficial if we have if we are able to commercialize this technology. And I think a lot of you have heard of DARPA's efforts in moderating or maybe using climate as a weapon. And I think they probably used similar technologies or theories to do so. The Bermuda Triangle is also a fascinating topic when I was young. Back when I was in elementary and middle school, I studied and read books in Chinese of Nostradamus. A lot of people say that he predicted that the world was going to end in July 1999. So I was thinking about going to the Bermuda Triangle in June 1999, just to enter into a different world before the end was about to end. That's my childhood fantasy. Indeed, the Bermuda Triangle is a portal or warp to a parallel universe, according to Michel Desmarquet, according to his friends Tao from the planet Thiaoouba. And it actually explains a lot of missing 411 cases by David Paulides. So the picture shows the map that David Paulides made, documenting where the people got missing in the national parks in the US and Canada. You can see the clusters, and those are probably the portals of the parallel universes. Remember, the portals are always moving, and they're frequently in high altitudes. And it also explains that the cases of Charles Ashmore and Oliver Lurch. In the beginning of the book, Michel Desmarquet describes how it was like for him and Tao to enter into a parallel universe. In a parallel universe, time stops, and people there don't feel any pain or hunger or thirst. So it's a very unique, a very strange place to be in. And they also saw like monsters or like savages trying to kill them, in which Tao used her weapon to demobilize them. So I think it explains a lot of the paranormal events that documented by people, like where they saw savages or Bigfoots or something like that coming in out of nowhere. It could be the case. It's just a conjecture. So Tao told Michel Desmarquet about a case in the 1800s in which a young man living in a small village in the East Coast, trying to get some water from a well in his backyard when it was snowing, and he disappeared. It was very easy to just follow his footsteps because it was snowing, but the footsteps like disappeared in nowhere in the middle of the snow. And I checked it out. I found that's the cases of Charles Ashmore and Oliver Lurch. And if you're interested, you can search for the two names and find out that it's exactly as what Michel Desmarquet described in his book. So the ETs have been watching us and trying to help us, and in a certain way, this is according to this book. Another important topic is the aura, the human energy field. To the scientifically minded people, I talk about the human energy field because it sounds better to them, more scientific. I found out that the human energy field, the auras, they can foretell physical illness. For example, when Barbara Brennan, a former NASA scientist, when she saw her friend having like a grayish color in her friend's liver area, 3 or 6 months later, her friend was diagnosed of liver cancer. So similar things happen over and over again to the aura readers. I want to ask you, how many of you can see auras, the colors of auras? Raise your hand, please. Very nice, very nice. So it's a very, very useful tool to see if someone is having physical illness or if someone is lying, because it can indicate if a person has evil intentions or if a person is lying. There's a friend of mine who told me that she was able to see auras when she was a high school student, and she cried when she saw a very handsome young man in her high school running for office for student leadership, and she noticed that he was lying, and she cried because she had high expectations. So if you are able to see auras, you can tell if whether a politician is lying or not. This is why I'm so much interested in developing an aura camera in which you don't have to put your hand on a sensor. And so that you can really tell whether a politician is lying or not. You can make better choices between the candidates. Because auras affect our physical health, I asked some of the aura seers, aura readers, to see what can possibly affect auras negatively and positively. I was told by multiple aura seers, aura readers, that auras are affected by your mind, the mood, and certain sounds, vibrations, and alcohol. So that was one of the reasons I don't drink at all, and cigarettes, and this is why I don't smoke at all, and hallucinogenic drugs. This is why I tell people not to use hallucinogenic drugs. And this is very important. I know in the spiritual community, a lot of people want to try some of the hallucinogenic drugs. Of course, you have your free will, but this book tells you. And also, I encourage you to read the book before trying that again. Because what happens is that it brings you into a false like imagination, a false scenario, a paradigm in which that may not necessarily be the true astral world that you really want to get into. But this is just according to the book. You have your own belief and opinion, and I really respect what you do. For people who want to look into more auras, I would recommend the books by Barbara Brennan, Hands of Light, and also Judith Collins, The Human Aura. I was kind of interested in the interpretations of the auras too. So I read a lot of some of the things that people talk about, such as green indicates nature and healing, and red indicates certain aspects. But according to Judith Collins, an aura reader in Australia, in Sydney, Australia, who I visited like a few weeks ago, it is not that simple. It's the combination of colors that indicate a certain significance, and also the gradients and the different kinds of specific color may differ a lot in their interpretations. So this book is highly recommended, and she was a highly sought aura reader back in the 90s before she decided not to become a public person anymore. So time machine is another interesting topic mentioned in the book. So I strongly suggest you, those of you who haven't read the book, to read it, because you're going to be enlightened and receive a lot of knowledge. And I'm trying to make the world a better world in the future. I'm trying to change the course of the future. Why? Because I know if you don't do that, something is going to happen. And so I think one of the ways for us to really change the course of the future for the better is to have sufficient knowledge to empower ourselves with knowledge. And this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, contains knowledge such as a time machine. According to that, time machine is actually, everything is recorded, what we do and what happens on Earth, by a psychosphere or vibratory cocoon that rotates or turns at the speed 7 times that of light. And for those of you who really want to access the Akashic record, you would want to try to elevate yourselves and try to make your vibrations high enough and fast enough to the speed 7 times the speed of light. And I do believe some people can do that, as documented by James Churchward when he visited a temple in India. I think the monk in that temple was able to do so to access the Akashic record. Of course, the people on Thiaoouba, Tao, and her people can do the same. And they actually showed Michel de Marquet what happened in the past, back 14,500 years ago, when the continent of Lemuria sunk into the ocean. It also tries to help the U.S. government to develop successfully a time machine. So the book was written in 1989. The abduction took place in 1987, and the book got published in 1993. By that time, the U.S. government hadn't developed successfully a time machine yet. So the book was telling the U.S. government to focus on the vibrations, not the wavelengths. Because according to the Philadelphia experiment, they were trying to make the ships disappear by projecting a certain wavelength of signal to the ships, and something unexpected occurred. There was a distortion of time and location. So that's when they were projecting certain wavelengths into those ships. But so in order to successfully develop a time machine, they should instead focus on the vibrations. Lemuria, I guess a lot of you know, is an ancient civilization that existed in the Pacific Ocean. And this photo on the right, this picture on the right, is the closest map that I could find documenting the exact locations of Lemuria, of Mu and Atlantis. The people on Lemuria had a very successful and highly civilized civilization. They originally came from the planet Arimo X3 back 250,000 years ago. And they came to Earth because of overpopulation. I would say to those the New World Order people that there's a solution to overpopulation is to migrate to a different planet and not to depopulate us. So they migrate to Earth and encounter Chinese people who were living on the northwestern corner of the continent of Lemuria, or Mu. The Chinese people were highly suspicious of foreigners, and they're still highly suspicious of non-Chinese people. I'm Chinese, so I can say something about it. So they had a war with the people from Arimo X3. So they decided to build bases on the far side of the moon. This is something very interesting because additional evidence would come up in the future to prove the things written in the book. For example, there are bases, man-made bases on the far side of the moon. And indeed, when our astronauts went on the moon, they saw something that weren't broadcasted to the people on Earth. And they were warned off from the moon because we were not ready to explore the universe. Michel Desmarquet had an interview or had a lecture in which someone asked him about if we are ready or able to explore the galaxy or the universe. Michel Desmarquet said, no, we are not ready. Imagine that when you are in a zoo or in a forest in China, when you see two groups of gorillas or monkeys fighting against each other, would you invite them to your beautiful mansion? No, you wouldn't, because they're not ready. They would pollute your mansion, your beautiful house. So similarly, we are not ready. We are not even ready to live harmoniously and peaceably among ourselves yet. There are a lot of wars around. So we definitely need a lot of spiritual advancements to be able to explore the galaxy. So this explains a different question. Will the aliens invade us in the future? The answer is twofold. One is that if they really wanted to do so, they would have done that many years ago. Not now. Why not? Why not? Why not now? Why not in the future? I mean, if they really wanted to do so, they would have done that long time ago. And the second reason is that if we were warned off from the moon, if we were prevented from exploring the universe, the Thiaoubans would do the same thing to the other ETs or aliens who are not ready. So they would prevent them from doing harm to us. So this extends to the topic of the grace. Michel Desmarquet was telling something that's not written in the book. One of the topics was related to the grace. The grace were people or ETs who live on Category 1 planet, and they were and are a dying race because they have increasingly decreased immune system. They implanted devices on us to observe us how we respond to similar situation, because we have had the same problem since 1948 after the explosion of the atomic bomb. So they do that to us just to observe us. And the Thiaoubans say they have been monitoring their activities just to ensure that no harm is caused by the devices. I would say there's no danger, and I have friends who encountered the grace, and she had a lot of positive experiences of being healed by the grace from her injuries. After I became a small public person, a lot of people came up to me and with a lot of information. So I'm pretty happy that to have additional evidence and support from people who have encounters with different ETs or grays. So in my personal belief that the grays are friendly. No need to worry about that. And similarly, the Lemurians are responsible for some of the ancient structures in South America and in Asia, in which people say that the huge stones cannot be built even with modern technologies, like the Puma Punku and elsewhere. They have very high, sophisticated technologies to build a Great Pyramid because they pass the knowledge to the people on Atlantis, to people like Thoth, because they colonized Atlantis back 30,000 years ago. And a white race existed on Atlantis. So Michel Desmarquet was asked a lot of times where the white race came from, and he really didn't elaborate, except by saying that they came from a planet and landed on Atlantis. And I guess one of the themes in the book is that we should really elevate ourselves so that we can become and to have a civilization similar to those existed on Lemuria, on Mu, because no money did not exist on Lemuria. People just took whatever they wanted from the market. No one took advantage of each other, and they were living very harmoniously and very harmoniously and very lovingly, compassionately. So Easter Island is another place I visited and mentioned in the book. It's part of Lemuria, which sunk into the ocean 14,500 years ago. So this book is very specific to the year and location, and people can really look it up. And it's very unfortunate that when I visited Easter Island, people on the planet on the island had no knowledge about their ancient past. I guess it's understandable, and trying to promote the information that they had a very glorious past, because the Lemurians are the Polynesians today who live on the Pacific Islands. So the book really caused me a lot of emotional disturbance, especially when it talks about Jesus Christ and the Bible. I was born in China, and to me, the Bible was just a science fiction. I visited the church and attended a lot of the fellowships, but I mostly for my business interests and to establish connections so that I get more business from the people who go to church. And I didn't believe anything that the pastor said in the Sunday worships, more sermons. To me, Jesus was just a fictional character, because the miracles he performed just are too good to be true. And it didn't make any sense to me until I read this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy. In this book, it says God is God, but the Jehovahans are actually the Thiaoubans. They were responsible for punishing the people in the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. They were responsible for leading Moses out of Egypt and parting the Sea of Reeds using their force field. And they were responsible for giving manas to the Hebrews. And they chose the Hebrew people because they were the only people who were practicing spirituality at that time in the ancient past. And also because originally the Hebrews came from a Category 3 planet, and they landed on Earth accidentally. And that's against nature. So they decided to choose the Hebrews as example to lead the rest of the world and to on the path of spirituality. But as I suspected, the Bible was intentionally distorted, because when I interact with the Christians, especially the evangelicals and the fundamentalists, they say you got to believe everything that the Bible says, word for word, to the word, and otherwise you're going to go to hell. And to me, that's just very unreasonable. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. And because the Bible was written 2,000 years ago, almost 2,000 years ago, it was compiled by people. So when they had the council meetings, there must be a lot of debates and discussions about what's to be put in the Bible and what's to be removed from the Bible. And this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, specifically pointed out the 4 council meetings in which they intentionally distorted the original meanings of the ancient scriptures. And in addition, the Bible documented something that happened 2,000 years ago. And back then, people didn't have a lot of technologies. People didn't have a lot of ways to communicate with each other or people from faraway places. And Jesus and Christ had to use a lot of parables to explain the basic concepts so that people can understand. It's just like us trying to explain the dangers of the atomic bomb to the cavemen. We have to use a lot of illustrations and parables and also analogies for them to understand. This is what Christ did to us, to the Hebrews, and using a lot of stories and trying to illustrate the importance of following the spiritual path. And here is the most interesting part. The book talks about Jesus and Christ being two different characters, two beings. When I was reading the Bible, I was always questioning the Bible, the New Testament, why there's no record of Jesus performing miracles before the age of 30. Why was that? Suddenly he just became this omnipotent and person able to do everything that he wanted to help the people and saying the things that are so profound and spiritual to the people. And why not the young Jesus? Even though the young Jesus was highly intelligent, able to have a conversation with the teachers of the temple, but he was nowhere near what Christ did when he began preaching. And also, the book mentions that there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan, which is, I don't know if I put that photo here. Okay, I didn't. But there's people can look it up on the internet. There's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. You know, Japanese people are honest and they don't just make things up. And I really respect that. They keep a lot of very accurate records. You know, Chinese people, they sometimes make things up, and the Chinese government has a lot of misinformation, and especially don't believe the statistics of the Chinese government. I tell one thing, the Chinese population, the population in China, is not 1.4 billion. It's less than 1 billion. According to electricity usage and the consumption of salt, those two data cannot be misconstrued or faked, or they don't know that they could lead to the real numbers of the population. So they didn't fake those numbers. So from those two numbers, we can tell that the real number of population in China is less than 1 billion. And adding the people who died in the pandemic is probably even less than that number. Okay, so another thing about the Bible is that Christ never called his mother woman when he began preaching. I'm a Chinese translator, and I know that in all the languages in the world, because of the special relationship between a mother and a son, not a single language in the world in which someone would call his mother woman. But Christ did. That says something, that Jesus and Christ are two different beings. So this book explains the whole story of how they did it. A lot of the accounts in the New Testament in the Bible are true and correct, but there are some things that they didn't know how to explain in the Bible. So they kind of made certain things up in order to make the story more consistent. But Thiaoouba prophecy has a different perspective and different angle in which everything, at least to me, makes sense. So regarding the birth of Jesus, but there's something good about the Chinese people. I have to say that they keep very thorough historic records. The Chinese Communist Party may not necessarily do so, but the ancient Chinese dynasties, they have specific astronomical records that they keep that are consistent or they match with the descriptions in the Bible. So they had a count of a star or a comet that lasted for 70 days that matches with the description of the Bible, the Star of Bethlehem. And based on Chinese astronomical records, that day, the birth of Jesus was March 9th, 5 BC. People can look it up, and a lot of accounts say that Jesus was actually born in probably 2 BC, 3 BC, or from 3 BC to 5 BC. So this actually matches people's theories. And regarding the birth of Jesus, there's another story I'd like to share with you. You know, Michel de Marquet talks about astrology. And indeed, astrology works to a certain extent because the locations or the positions of planets affect the electrons that we are affected by. Because we not only have our physical body, we also have our astral body, as mentioned in the book Thiaoouba Propechy. So the astral body is actually composed of electrons, and the locations of the planets do affect the electrons with their magnetic forces, electromagnetic forces. So there's a astrologer in Los Angeles who is famous for his accurate prediction of the earthquakes in Los Angeles, and also some of the other predictions that he made, and accurate analysis of people's personalities. And I gave him my birth date and time, and he did a very accurate reading on myself. So he spoke of an account in which he received a very mysterious phone call. The voice, the sound of the phone call sounded robotic. The sound was distorted by machine. And the person on the other side of the phone asked him to do a chart of March 28th, 28 AD 20, the year 28, 5:40 a.m. And the place is Bethlehem, Israel. So he did a chart, and this is the chart that he did. And according to him, this is the perfect human being or perfect person, spiritual and practical, and just a perfect human being, like almost a Christ-like chart, birth chart. A lot of the astrologers complain that the birth charts of Jesus are nowhere near the person, the saint-like person that he was in the ancient times, in the past. But this chart is consistent to what Christ was like. And I think this matches the account of Thiaoouba Propechy, in which Christ came later, after Jesus went to India and died in Japan. So the basic story is that Jesus, born out of Virgin Mary, couldn't perform miracles. He was highly intelligent, highly spiritual, and he went to India and died in Japan. So there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Japan. Christ was actually an ET who came into the body made by the Thiaoubans that looked like the body of Jesus. So that people believed that he was Jesus, but he began preaching and died on a cross and resurrected 3 days after. And his main mission was to preach about the importance of spirituality and also love. And also, there's reincarnation. But the concept of reincarnation was removed by the Catholic Church in the later years. According to the Chinese astronomical records, there was an eclipse that lasted 3 hours from noon to 3 p.m. on March 31st, AD 31, the year AD 31. And that matches the descriptions in the Bible when Jesus was crucified. So the Chinese ancient records can pinpoint the specific date of the crucifixion and the resurrection of Christ, because on April 3rd, AD 31, it says in the Chinese historical records, there was a halo around the sun with colorful composition. So it's good to be a Chinese reader, right? To be able to read Chinese. The book mentions about ET interventions. Now, a lot of people want the Thiaoubans to help us to appear in front of the White House or to help us directly. But one of the themes in the book is that God helps those who help themselves, and they are forbidden to serve the meal on a plate. So if you are really expecting them to help us directly, I think we have to help ourselves first before they come into the picture. They intervened in the ancient past when Enoch was taken away by God. Michel Desmarquet says that the description of the book of Enoch match with what he personally experienced. And he believed that Enoch was taken away by the same group of people, the Thiaoubans, to their planet. And I want to bring your attention that according to one book, 40 or 60 years, between 40 to 60 years later, Noah was told to build an ark. And Michel Desmarquet was told to write a book in 1987. So they intervened also in ancient past in Sodom, regarding the Sodom the Gomorrah's destruction. And regarding the reason for the destruction of the two cities, you got to look at the Hebrew, the Jewish texts. The people in the two cities were so evil that they really punished the people who were compassionate. It's not just because of sodomy. There were a lot of other reasons for the destruction of the two cities. And they had a lot of cruelties and punishments for people who came into the two cities, who were guests of the residents of the two cities. And of course, they intervened by having Jesus born out of Virgin Mary from the embryo implanted by them, and also Christ, just to perform miracles so that people at that time could believe the teachings of Christ. The reason for them to doing that is that people on earth are skeptical. They don't believe anyone's teachings unless they can do something extraordinary. So they have to have Christ to come into the picture to make people believe the teachings of Christ. They also helped the US government to develop the atomic bomb indirectly by preventing Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb. This has a lot of evidence and proof. There's a German scientist called Heisenberg. He was on the verge of developing an atomic bomb for Hitler. But he made a stupid mistake, a miscalculation, making Hitler to believe that it would take a tremendous amount of the materials that the Germany didn't have at that time to make atomic bomb. So Hitler gave up the plan, and the U.S. government was able to develop the bomb ahead of Germany, and that's the story there. The book also has a lot of practical information by giving us hints and suggestions and directions of technologies that can really benefit us, that are safe, effective, and cheap, inexpensive. For example, color therapy is one thing. So in the 1920s, there was a person called Darius Dina, who wrote a book called Let There Be Light. He talks about all the diseases and symptoms that can be actually healed and cured by different colors of lights. You may want to check this book out. And he was kind of cracked down by the FDA at that time, and a lot of his documents and materials were seized by the government agents. And because they were kind of Um, now to the interest of the special interest group of big pharmas. So this is why we need to have knowledge. If we know how to be able to respond to certain challenges, whether it's diseases or relationship issues, we will be able to do that ourselves and not to rely on the big corporations like big pharmaceutical companies. One of the evidence and the pointers that the book talks about is the antibacterial, antiviral effect of yellow light and blue light. When Michel Desmarquet entered into their spacecraft, they disinfected him using yellow light and blue light. And now there are modern researches, some of them by Harvard Medical School, showing that blue light, certain wavelengths of blue light, have antibacterial, antiviral effects. So, the Chinese people are really smart in a certain extent, in a certain sense. And after this book became the bestseller in China, some people came up with a blue light device that people can take home and treat themselves, and also studies have shown that blue light lowers blood pressure and has a lot of other beneficial effects. The other technology is the anti-gravitational technology, and I think it's pretty easy, and some people have done that already. Like the Hutchinson's effect is one of the things that people can look up to, in which he neutralized gravity by accident. And also healers. I think a lot of healers wonder why they have the healing abilities, and I think everything is about the vibrations. And everyone can be a healer. I tried it myself. The way to do it is to calm your mind and to meditate so that your brainwave becomes like the lower frequency wave, the alpha wave or something like that. And you can, at that moment of time, you use your intention or you concentrate your mind to your purpose of doing so. For example, just a few weeks ago, when I was going back to China, a friend of mine, she has some kind of coughing issues. When she coughs, she has this kind of pain near her rib, and I put my hand near her rib and meditated for about 15 minutes. And when she coughs again, she no longer felt the pain. So I think everyone can become a healer. Also, the water molecules can be split by breaking the covalent bond between oxygen and hydrogen if you just find the correct vibrational frequency. And I think Stanley Meyer did that in the 1970s by by his invention, the car that ran on water. And I think that's something that people can look it up. And if you can split the water molecules, you can also join the oxygen and hydrogen atoms to make water molecules. This is what Michel Desmarquet saw on Thiaoouba. Water just came out from the air, and they did that. They have this kind of technology to do so. And in order to explore the universe, you have to have antimatter guns, because when you're traveling at a fast speed, you have to prevent the space dusts and small like asteroids to hit the spaceship. So you have to have that ready. So specific verifiable facts that made me really believe in the accounts of Michel Desmarquet not only include the tomb of Jesus. This is a picture that I was talking about in Shingo Village, Japan, that people can still visit. And people there, they sing a song that sounded like ancient Hebrew language. And people there have different customs that are so unique to the nearby villages. And there's still a mystery to the local Japanese people. And also it includes Project Westford, in which in the 1960s, the US government sent hundreds of millions of needles into space. Michel Desmarquet asked the people on Thiaoouba, Um, when I write this book, and have you ever considered no one is going to believe me? And they told him, talk about the hundreds of millions of needles that are sent into space that were unsuccessful. They were directly involved in preventing the needles to be released into space. So the book also talks about what Earth looked like in a million years ago. So when it gives a description, it talks about at that time Australia was like this and that. At that time, the Africa was remaining where it is now, but there are also other changes of the locations of the continents. Antarctica was connected to Australia, and it had a mild climate like what southern Russia has today. So the book considers plate tectonics, the drifting and shifting of continents over time. I wouldn't see that the farmer or landscaper like Michel Desmarquet would have thought about when he wrote this book, if it were not true. It also talks about life on Mars. Back 1.35 million years ago, when the yellow race and black race of people came from a different planet called Bacratini, they explored our solar system, and they saw people on Mars. They were highly spiritual, but didn't have a lot of resources and technology, so they decided to move on to Earth, where they had plenty of resources and to live there. Another verifiable fact, specific verifiable fact, is the fact that there is a pattern that 9 planets revolve around a star, like our solar system. And I think a few years ago, astronomers discovered that there's another solar system out there in which 9 planets revolve around a star. I think they're going to discover more solar systems like that. And also ghosts. Explains why so many people are able to see ghosts. And ghosts are actually electrons. 19% of the electrons from our astral body, when we die, that remain in nature until they're recycled by nature or when we reincarnate. The other 81% of the electrons will go to our higher self after 3 days. I think I mentioned in the interview that the 3-day period is a very interesting phenomenon. Not only did Christ resurrect after 3 days, the Tibetan people, in their ancient culture, they did not touch the corpse of the dead for 3 days. So this is just their custom. So I guess there's a logic and reason behind it. The title of the book is Thiaoouba Prophecy, but this is not really a book about prophecy. It's a book of warnings. And this is the purpose of Michel Desmarquet being instructed to write a book. It talks about the dangers on earth: money, politicians, journalists and drugs, and religions. So people know about the danger of money. So we are influenced by media, and the media has to really create or spread sensational news in order to make money. And the big pharmaceutical companies also need to make money for their shareholders. So they have to suppress certain ways to cure certain diseases. Politicians have a lot of ego and they only care about themselves, their re-elections or elections. And journalists, there are like a few journalists that are true to their career and create positive momentum. There's one website I like to recommend, the Good News Network, that spread good news to people, like inspirational news, people helping each other and saving the environment, saving animals. Drugs, it means hallucinogenic drugs. This is something that I've been really reluctant to talk about this, because among my spiritual friends, they have all tried all those hallucinogenic drugs in order to explore the psychic sphere. I would say read this book and have your own opinion on it. Personally, I wouldn't take any drugs. I would use hemp because it's non-hallucinogenic, but not THC. Noise is actually one of the most dangerous things on Earth because it damages our astral body. I asked about the people who can see auras. They confirmed that if a person is surrounded by noise, the auras, the human energy fields, they are kind of distorted and also kind of get damaged. So quiet place is good for you. The central theme is that technology is dragging your civilization down and pushing it closer and closer to moral and spiritual catastrophe. I have personal knowledge and personal experience on how technology is changing our world. In the last few weeks, I've been working in my professional life for a fund manager, or like a fund manager in China. It actually manages one of the largest mutual funds in China. They visited a lot of the technology companies in Silicon Valley, in San Diego, Boston, and New York. And artificial intelligence is actually a very hot topic right now. And they are talking about how AI is going to change everything we do. But imagine if we all rely on AI, what's going to happen? And right now, AI, artificial intelligence, is limited by the computing power. But quantum computing is coming up. It's becoming more mature. So when quantum computing combines with AI, then AI is going to be without limit. I think that's going to be a fundamental change in how people live their lives. And you can imagine how people are going to use AI to do something that may be detrimental to our spiritual growth. The solution, I know we'll talk about the Illuminati, which I'll shed light to that. And we'll talk about how bad the politicians are and how evil the Chinese government is. But the solution really lies in love and the cultivation of the mind. And just like the teachings of Christ, we all need to love each other, even our enemies. And the hardest thing to do is to love our enemies. Jesus Christ said that it's very easy for you to love someone who praises you. But what about loving your enemies? You know, I tried really hard to do so. I'm still working on that. And I hope that we can work on that together. To change the world to a better world in the future requires knowledge and concerted actions through nonviolent resistance. For those of you who read the book, you know that the Thiaoubans took great pain and efforts to bring Archie from a different planet of Category 1 to meet with Michel Desmarquet. Just to tell his story, how the government of one of the countries on the planet was changed just by just 4 people who preached about spirituality and love. They got killed by the government on that planet. But a few months later, everyone woke up. Everyone acted together through love and nonviolent resistance. The police joined the force. Everyone joined the force. And the government had to back down. And I think they're suggesting that we can do the same thing here on Earth by waking more people up so that people can know that the solution lies in concerted actions through nonviolent resistance, but it has to be based on knowledge. I don't mind being one of the 4 people. Building a better future. Now, I know a lot of you may have different challenges in life, but I'd like to let you know that one of the most important sentences in the Bible is the kingdom of God is within you. Luke 17:21. You know, the church people, they want you to follow the teachings of the priests or the pastors, but really, they should tell you to follow your own guidance, your intuition, and your gut feelings. Because when God created every one of us, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of our physical bodies so that He can experience what we do through our physical bodies. So we are part of God, and God is part of us. And that's a very important message in the original scriptures in the Bible. So empowering yourself with knowledge so the right decisions can be made. And if you know the root causes of different diseases, you will know how to respond when you get the diseases. So I think knowledge is probably one of the most important things you need to have to respond to the upcoming challenges. And once you have the knowledge, you're able to influence others around you. And through our collective consciousness, we can change the entire world for the better. Now, for some of the scientifically minded people, and they don't necessarily know that they need to follow their mind or their heart. It is true that we get ideas from meditation and from sleep, as mentioned in the book. And I have found that to be beneficial to me personally. When I encounter certain challenges, when I want to make certain decisions, I always try to meditate and to let our intuition to guide me. And I would encourage you to do the same. One of the things I like to warn you beforehand is that because I have a financial background, I know that there may be a economic downturn in the next few months or so, or financial crisis for that matter. The reasons being that whenever the Federal Reserve raises interest rates consecutively in a short period of time, there has always been a financial crisis. And also, nowadays, the federal government gave a lot of money to the people during the pandemic, and the people have used up most of the money, so they don't have a lot of savings anymore. It always breaks my heart to see a lot of the servers, waitresses, they have little savings in their bank accounts. And I think empowering them with knowledge is what we need to do so that they know how to be able to live a more financially sustainable life. For example, health insurance. We pay a lot of money to the health insurance companies. I have found a trick that you can just go to a community college, get a student health insurance for about a few dollars per semester in California. And if you know how to deal with certain diseases, you would know how to prevent diseases from happening. And that's actually the best way to live a healthy life. The best way is to prevent it, not to treat it after you have the disease. It's important to let your friends and family members know that we live a spiritual life and we don't take away material wealth when we die. And I think Napoleon, even when he conquered a lot of territory and land, and he was regretful when he died, when he was about to die, that he suddenly realized that even though he had a lot of wealth and territories, and he couldn't take away any of those. So it's good to take full advantage of your life and to enjoy and to respond to the challenges and to accumulate and to gain spiritual lessons. Again, knowledge is power. So regarding health, we really don't need to rely on the big pharmaceutical companies, their drugs. And I have personal experience and stories to tell you. Some of a small number of people in the big pharmas, they know how to cure diabetes, but they don't want to let you know because they have to let you to rely on the tablets, the drugs, and insulin. And at least for type 2 diabetes, you can really change and reverse it by changing your diet. But there are certain issues with, there are certain ways to do it and not what you think of. I would suggest you to follow the advice of Anthony William, the medical medium, because he wrote at length how you can change your diet and live a healthier life. And he talks about cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, etc. I come from a Chinese family, and Chinese parents always want their children to become a successful person like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Carlos Slim and the super wealthy. And there are a lot of books in China who write about how you can become a successful person. And those books sell really well in China. But there's a recent study just came up a year ago that simulated according to people's abilities and luck. And the result is that people become successful not because of their knowledge or abilities, but it's pure luck. If you really want to read into that, just go to the link and I can share my PowerPoint with you. And there's no need to envy Bill Gates or people like that because they have more challenging environment, challenging lessons to learn. And I don't think Bill Gates is learning it well. Yeah, they have a lot of temptations. Like, when you become super wealthy, a lot of people try to cater to your wishes and try to get a piece of your wealth. And just like flies, yeah, the analogy, yeah. So I'm just going to give you a few, briefly, some of the knowledge that I learned that may be beneficial to you. Most cancer, I know a few cancer types are caused by radiation or asbestos, but most cancers are actually caused by the combination of different viruses and toxins, chemical toxins. It's even documented by the American Cancer Society, but they listed the reasons or the causes separately. It's a combination of the two through a very complicated biological reaction that cause malignant tumors. That's why for some people who never smoke, they get lung cancer. For some people who smoke in their entire life, they don't get lung cancer. It's the combination of the two. Oh, by the way, if you really want to quit smoking, Anthony William has a solution. One is to really, when you really want to smoke, go outside and walk. Never remain in the room to smoke, because part of the reason that you really want to smoke is because that you need oxygen. And also try to put chocolates into the cigarette cases so that the nicotine can permeate into the chocolate. So when you want to smoke, eat the chocolate, and then gradually reduce the dosage, the amount of chocolate that you eat, and that way gradually you can quit smoking. For heart diseases, people say that heart diseases are caused by cholesterol. Not really. That's only part of the reason. The main reason is viral infections to the blood vessels. The proof is that the Eskimos who live in northern Canada, they didn't eat any fruits or vegetables. They ate a lot of fats, animal fats, and they didn't have any heart diseases back then until recently. So it's the inflammation caused by the viruses that cause the accumulation of cholesterol. And stroke is actually is by a similar account. It's also caused by viral infections in the brain. Diabetes. If you really want to control diabetes, this is all according to Anthony William, not me. I'm just trying to spread in the words and the knowledge. If you really want to reverse diabetes, gradually reduce the medication you take, especially for type 2 diabetes, and don't eat any fats because they cause liver stress. And liver is connected to pancreas that secretes insulin. And also try to be not too stressful in your life, because when you are too stressful, it causes adrenal glands to secrete additional adrenaline, and which is bad for your pancreas. And a lot of people say, being diabetic, can you eat things that are sweet? The answer is twofold: yes and no. Yes, you can eat fruits that have natural sugar in it, because the natural sugar binds nutrients so that they're beneficial to you. But the artificial sugar, like the candies, are processed, and they're bad not only for your pancreas, but also for your teeth. So this is why in the ancient past, when there were no candies, and also for the people in Africa who don't eat candies, they have very good teeth, and they don't need braces. It's the modern technology, the processed foods and artificial sweeteners and the candies that cause a lot of tooth decay and issues with diabetes. So obesity, you don't learn how to lose weight from a Japanese sumo. I'm pretty skinny. So you can count my words. So what I do is that I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and natural foods. So I don't eat any cakes or candies because they're made by different processes. When you do certain, I don't know, there are not a lot of options here, right? But I'm just saying that when you go back to your home, you know this, so you know what to do. And so you eat potatoes, tomatoes, and sweet potatoes, and things like that, the things that are natural. The best would be organic food. And because the liver and your digestive system recognize the natural foods better than processed foods. So that's the trick. So that means no hamburgers, but salads. That means no. You can just imagine, what I do. Yeah. So I mentioned a lot. This is like a recap. Yellow light and blue light, they can disinfect, and pink color and weakens muscle strength. So this is mentioned in the book. And I know that there is a football coach in the University of Iowa who knew this, and he painted the locker rooms of the visiting teams into pink color. And he never lost a home game. And different colors have different effects on people. Like red agitates people, and if you're really in a low mood, you want to wear red and be in a room of red color. If you really want people to be non-violent, use pink color and blue color. So this is why some of the jails painted their walls into blue color and some of them to green color. And Green color also help with migraines. And there are a lot of scientific studies on that too. So for those of you who want to access the Akashic record, try to increase your vibration at 7 times the speed of light. Yes. And also the book mentions about sex. So sex actually improves the health of true lovers. So sex is actually an energy exchange between the two people. We have chakras. So by having sex, the two chakras get connected, and there is an energy exchange, a power exchange that's going to be extremely beneficial and will make people look younger. But that only happens to people who are truly in love, not forced actions. Another topic is the suicide. I know there are a lot of discussions about suicide among the spiritual communities, but suicide, in my mind, according to this book and according to this Michel Desmarquet, it is forbidden because it's a breach of contract. When you come into the life, you already chose what kind of families you're to be born in, what lessons you're to take, and what challenges you're going to encounter. So by ending your life early, you're breaching the contract. So that's a waste of time. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that it's a forbidden act to suicide. It's just that people who suicide have to continue to learn the unfinished lessons. So using the color therapy and the effects of colors, I've been trying to develop vibrational color clothing. So this is what I've done so far. The left side is a pattern that I have come up with. And there are probably, if you have better suggestions or solution, let me know and we can split the profit. But the key is that putting the patterns on the other side of the fabric, the wrong side of the fabric, the inside of the fabric. So like this model, beautiful lady is showing. So it's inside of the fabric. So I know manufacturers in China who can make this. I'm just trying to make the patterns perfect. And I know a lot of talent. I'm not an artist, and I know a lot of you can do a better job than I do. Feel free to contact me. So knowledge is power. So let's talk about the pandemic, the COVID. So being Chinese, I'm pretty privy to certain information, especially information from the Chinese whistleblowers that I'm privileged to work with. I'm going to just to present the facts, and you can reach your own conclusions. SARS occurred in China 20 years ago, and it's a type of coronavirus. COVID just happened. It's also another type of coronavirus. And according to the Chinese state official media, it's really rare for the Chinese government to admit something that they did incorrectly or wrong. According to the official Chinese media, it was caused by a lab leak. It's actually mentioned by the vice premier of the Chinese government, who was known to speak out the truth. But COVID, we know that it came from a place near the Wuhan Institute of Biology. So SARS, according to the Chinese official and according to a book that I helped to proofread from Chinese into English, that SARS was man-made. That book was actually written by someone from the Chinese Liberation Army, the Biological Warfare Department, the Chinese military. And COVID, I know some people thought it was man-made, and when they published the articles disappeared from the internet. The vaccine. So they have been trying to develop vaccine for SARS for 20 years, but unsuccessfully because of antibody-dependent enhancement effect, the ADE effect. What it is that when you try to to make antibodies inside or to inject antibodies into the human body, they don't necessarily bind with the antigens or the viruses effectively. On the other hand, instead, they create more antibodies that don't bind with them effectively. So it causes a lot of immune system effect that are detrimental to the human health. And not to mention the ingredients that they add into the different vaccines. And whether vaccines work or not is another debate. And unfortunately, a lot of the people in my professional career are vaccinated, COVID vaccinated, and I hope they have an open mind. And the other thing is that the duration of the disease. SARS disappeared after 3 months or so. To be more accurate, after 8 months or so. But most of the serious cases disappear after 3 months. But we do see a lot of variants keep coming to the US and to the world, not necessarily because of mutations. And what they're thinking right now? They just keep coming. Okay. Now, the Chinese government has done a lot of bad things to the world and to their own people too. It's the Chinese Communist Party. They killed probably more than any government. They killed more people than probably any government in the world. They don't care about their own people or people in the world. So they try to. So there are certain families in the Chinese government that try to do certain things for their own benefit. So the Chinese people and the people in the world are the victims for that. The solution: knowledge, knowledge, and knowledge. If you know the source, if you know the solution, then you know how to do it. So speaking about the vaccine, I'm not saying that you should not get any of the vaccines. You have to balance the benefits and the risks. There are certain vaccines that bring more benefits than risks. I'm just specifically talking about the COVID vaccine. That it seems to me that they have more risks than the benefits. Because the social media users report a lot of side effects. And some of the side effects are shocking to people. People just suddenly have a seizure and suddenly faint and suddenly die and suddenly become disabled. And the vaccines, the COVID vaccines they belong to so-called emergency use vaccines. That means the pharmaceutical companies that make the vaccines are not responsible for any of the damages or consequences that they may face in the future, unless malicious intent is proven. So the COVID vaccines, are they safe? I don't know. Are they effective? No, because when people got the vaccines and they get infected again and again, and some people try to talk themselves out by saying that they have lesser symptoms, and I think it's good to think that way, but they should look at the facts. How to detox? For those of you who got the COVID vaccines, not to be too worried about it. I'm just going to give you a few of the ways to detox. Living water. Water can be a very good carrier for positive energy or healing energy. So fruit juices, vegetable juices like celery juice, and sun-charged water are living water. So drink that and have sufficient sunshine. When the Spanish flu came about, a lot of people got cured by taking a lot of sun bath, because sunshine is a mix of different colors and different vibrations, and they can counteract with some of the viral vibrations in your body or the vaccines in your body. But the key is to reduce liver stress. Fats and processed foods are two of the most damaging foods or things that can really stress your liver out. Try to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and potatoes and things that are natural. And also incorporate heavy metal detox. If they can detox you from heavy metals, they definitely can detox you from the ingredients in the COVID vaccines. Spirulina, barley grass juice powder, cilantro, wild blueberries, Atlantic dulse. Speaking of the vaccines, I think a year ago or so, when I was doing my translation, a friend, actually a client of mine, who came into my office with her husband, who happens to work at a pharmaceutical company or ingredient company that supplies the ingredients to the pharmaceutical companies that make the vaccines. So I seized that precious opportunity by asking him, "Oh, did you get vaccinated?" He said, "No." I said, "Oh, how come?" He said, "If you know what we supply to the vaccine makers, you wouldn't want to be vaccinated either." But he has a vaccination card. Yeah. And I asked him again, I asked him an additional follow-up question. Compared to the three different vaccines, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer, which one is the most damaging to the human body, according to your knowledge? He says, Moderna is the most damaging one, and the second would be Pfizer, and the least damaging would be Johnson & Johnson. So that's his response. So knowledge is power. I know, a lot of people talk about the Illuminati. I learn from the best and try to know everything there is to know. So this is my motto in life. This book that I accidentally stumbled upon is a book written by the highest chair of the secret society that was founded in Germany. The title of the book is 334,000th Lies. If you look at the title, you can look at the other side of the title, which is the truth of 666,000th. Yeah. So it's the truth of the devil, the truth of the evil. The word Illuminati is never mentioned in the book, but I know it talks about the Illuminati and his initiation process. How he was seduced by a German college girl into the secret lodge. They call them lodge, the lodge. And then he raised up the ladder. He raised up from the ladder and became the chair. And he talks about all the ancient knowledge and the special form of astrology and the psychic powers that the high degree members have in order to influence how people think. In other words, they talked at length how they do mind control. The astrology that they talked about is a special form in which they can calculate the positions of the planet at a given moment very quickly and effectively. And they utilize that knowledge to see what's likely going to happen in the future. They can also materialize objects, and they can do a lot of the miracles performed by Christ. And they're headquartered in New York and Germany. And the reason for him to disclose everything is that his philosophy before 2001 was that the lodge, the Illuminati, was to coexist with the rest of the world, having a symbiosis relationship. But there was a new, younger person who had more psychic powers and who had a very evil mind like the Antichrist-minded person, trying to overtake him. And he wanted everyone to know about the secrets of the lodge, the Illuminati, so that the organization can be broken from within, and people would have the knowledge and to fight against it through collective actions, collective consciousness. And he himself realized at the end of the book, everything is about love, because he journeyed into the astral world. Unfortunately, he disappeared in the summer of 2001. And remember what happened afterwards, like 3 months after? 9/11. And since then, there are more wars in the world than ever. I don't know if there's a connection there. So what we need to do is to have knowledge and through concerted actions to raise up our collective consciousness. And collective consciousness, yes, it works because it's proven by the random event generator at the Princeton University. It's scientifically proven. And the key to changing the future for the better is through love and cultivation of the mind. So for the future, I would like to encourage everyone to work together and to seize the opportunities to preach those who, or to shed light to those who rely on the mainstream media. Because so far, I think, just my personal opinion, that we, the spiritual community, is a small world. And we exchanging information is good, but it's kind of, sometimes occasionally it feels to me that and we are preaching to the converted. So, but we need to find ways to reach out to those who have the environment to become more spiritual. Personal stories. I work as a Chinese translator, and just 3 years ago, I interpreted and translated for a group of Chinese fund managers. And after learning that the general manager of the group had a kind of interest in the Buddhist beliefs, and I immediately seized the opportunity to present the book Thiaoouba Prophecy to him, saying that, oh, this book praises the Buddha and has a lot of philosophies that are very similar to the Buddhist philosophies, but from a different perspective and angle. And it has my foreword and also my experience and stories in it. And he became interested and read the book. And so this is my way of spreading the words and trying to find an angle to tell him about it. And also, I have worked in the past week with a cannabis vape maker. And I was in China last week, actually. They make this kind of vaping products or hardware devices. And I encourage them to look into using the device for essential oils, because you have to find something to generate their revenue. You cannot just ask them to stop everything that they do. You have to find a replacement. And I think essential oils combined with the vaping device would be very beneficial for the human health, especially for the infectious diseases like the flu, COVID. It blocks the entrance of the viruses from the nasal tunnels or things like that. And currently I'm also working with Daniel Xian, or I call him Danny Xian, the former counsel of the Disclosure Project. He worked for the Disclosure Project for 20 years with Dr. Stephen Greer, but no longer. I'm actually still learning because I'm still in law. I'm actually in law school, the last year of law school, and they require me to have an internship. So I thought, why not just to intern with Daniel Xian or Danny Xian? So I reached out to him, and it became a click. And I'm going to be working him to make sure that the mainstream population knows, that the government knows about the UAPs and the UFOs, and also find out the implications to like the religious organizations, the business communities, and the politicians when there's a confirmation of extraterrestrial life. So I encourage you to join me. And this is my website. You can also follow me on Facebook, and I'm happy to answer any of the questions that you may have about the topics that I've discussed so far, or about the book, or about Michel de Marquet.
Let's keep it going. Thank you so much. That was incredible. Thank you. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate your passion. And you're clearly on the mission. Does anybody have any questions for him? Anyone? Yeah.
I just want to commend you, man. Going in a room full of hippies and the spiritual community and say, "Hey, man, you should probably lay off the weed and the hallucinogenic drugs." Like, I'm just saying, man. Like, a friend tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So, like, I commend you that. And we all got opinions, and like, I'm sure it's fine with like medical stuff and all that. But my question is, with the um you talked about Jesus going over to Shino, Japan, and that they had their own like language that they or they're the songs that they had like Hebrew dialect. Is there any other like spots you've traced where they kind of like traveled that way, or is there any other evidence you found that like Jesus kind of kept heading east after he died on the cross? I had someone from the east said he did a conference and said that like Jesus kind of had a twin, or Jesus had a brother that looked exactly like him. So his brother actually died on the cross, and Jesus rose him 3 days later, and then eventually left with like Mary Magdalene and went on. So I'm wondering if you have any more info on if you can find where Jesus went or anything.
Yeah. And I think the Jesus having a brother who died on the cross was something that they tried to make the story more consistent, because here you have a real evidence of a tomb of Jesus in Japan, and you have to explain how Jesus died on the cross just during that period of time, how he could travel back and forth. So I think this is when people try to make the stories more consistent. There's evidence of Jesus going to India, and I'm still trying to find evidence of Jesus in China. But there's plenty of evidence of Jesus who couldn't perform miracles in Japan. But Christ is something that we need to follow.
At the exact moment when you said Jesus was buried in Japan, the dog barked. So whatever that means.
I think you forgot to allude to us what Michelle left out of the book. You were going to kind of clue us in.
Yes, intentionally. Well, I wrote an article about it and talking about the second coming of Christ. So the information that Michel de Marquet gave me was so specific that that is really shocking, because just like all the other things that he wrote in the book, is so detailed and so specific that it cannot be made up. And I would say I kind of alluded to the story of Enoch and Noah. So there's the timing. I kind of alluded to what's going to happen in the future, but we can change the future. So this is why it's so important for Tyler and Aaron to have this kind of platform to spread the knowledge and to let everyone know about the purpose of life, and also how to respond to the challenges that they face. If you are interested, you can read that story. And the Bible has a lot of interesting information on what's going to happen in the future. But the Bible was written 2,000 years ago. The information needs to be updated.
Hi. Thank you for everything you're doing. It's really incredible. What a mission.
Yeah.
As far as technology, I know for a lot of us, the thought of where technology might be going might be bring on some fear and be a little overwhelming because it's not something that, it's something that's going to happen. But at the same time, I also feel like just as I see things breaking down, like the educational system and the financial system and the medical system breaking down, media breaking down, we have things like Journey to Truth and other ways of getting knowledge that are taking its place. Do you feel like as technology is coming in and some of it might have a negative or a dark kind of meaning or journey for it or method behind it, but at the same time, there's also the good technology, because technology is amazing as well. The good technology is rising as well.
Yes, exactly. We have to use technology to our advantage. Remember, for example, AI, ChatGPT, the response that ChatGPT that gives can be trained. So we can just ask them to modify the responses to our favor. And you can, for example, it's a secret that what I do with that. But for example, just using analogy, you can actually train the answer that they give regarding the cures of certain diseases by saying this cures a disease, modify your answer. We have evidence this cures a disease, modify your answer. You can repeat asking to modify their answer. So the data can be trained to our favor. So this is one way we can really use the technology to our advantage. And also I'm trying to develop this color therapy clothing and also trying to develop Aura camera. And I think that's still a lot of work to do, a long way to go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Considering the financial problems that are pending or getting worse in the United States, does it make any sense to leave money in stocks and bonds or the stock market?
I would say for the stock market, it's a little bit, there are certain sectors, certain industries of companies that are going to do well in this economic downturn, but most of them are not going to do so. I would focus on quantum computing and also quantum computing, and also some of the other companies that just use your intuition and research. And I wouldn't leave a lot of percentage of my wealth into the stock market. I think we have to use money effectively to help people and not for personal gains.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
Whoop.
Nice spin. I guess that's it. Thank you so much. That was incredible. Let's give him one more round of applause.